Take a breath. Hold it for a moment. The air you just drew in contains hydrogen, and the hydrogen in your body is the oldest thing you will ever touch. It is older than this book, older than your country, older than the human race. It is older than the oldest fossil, older than the first living cell, older than the earth beneath you and the sun above you and every star you have ever seen in the night sky. The hydrogen in the water of your blood, in the cells of your hands, in the breath moving through you right now, was made in the first few minutes after the universe began, almost 14 billion years ago, when there was no earth and no sun and no stars at all, only a young cosmos cooling out of unimaginable heat, and it has been travelling ever since, through the dark between galaxies, through the birth and death of stars, through the forming of worlds, to arrive, at last, here, now, inside you. You are carrying, in your own body, atoms as old as the universe itself, and you are constantly trading them with the world. With every breath out, you release atoms that were part of you into the air, where they drift and mix and are breathed in by others, by plants, by creatures, scattered across the planet on the wind. With every breath in, you take in atoms that were elsewhere a moment ago, that may have been part of an ocean, a forest, another person, a star's old ash settled into the air. You are not sealed off from the world. You are a swirling, ceaseless exchange with it, taking in and giving back a few times every minute for your whole life. The atoms that are you now were not you a few years ago and will not be you a few years hence. Most of your body is replaced, atom by atom, over time, rebuilt continuously from the matter flowing through you. And nearly all of that matter, whatever it has been recently, traces back through the same long history to the same ancient source. You are a meeting place where the universe's old atoms gather for a while, do the work of being a person, and move on. The hydrogen passing through your lungs right now will be in someone else's lungs before long, and was in a star's cloud before the earth existed, on a journey that has no real beginning short of the birth of time itself. How old are you, really? You might say 30 years or 50 or 17, but that is only the age of the arrangement, the particular pattern that is you. The stuff you are made of is almost as old as time. There is a real sense in which you are the youngest thing in the room and the oldest thing in the room at once. The pattern, the arrangement, the living organization that is you, is new. It began at your conception and will end at your death, a brief flicker in cosmic time. But the material that pattern is made of is ancient, almost beyond meaning, some of it dating to the very birth of the universe. You are a new arrangement of very old things. A wave is like this too, new in its shape, old in its water. The wave that breaks on the shore is a fresh and momentary form, but the water in it has been in the ocean for ages. You are a wave in the ocean of cosmic matter, a shape the universe is making, for a while, out of stuff far older than the shape. And when the wave breaks, when the pattern ends, the ancient material does not end with it. It returns to the ocean, to be gathered again into other shapes, other waves, other lives. Only the pattern is yours. The stuff was always the universe's, on loan. You are a verb more than a noun, a happening more than a thing. The universe doing the work of being you for a little while with materials it has used 1,000 times before and will use 1,000 times again. Every atom in your body has a history that runs back to the beginning, an unbroken story with no gaps in it, from the first moments of the universe to this exact instant. Nothing was created from nothing along the way. The atoms were only borrowed, gathered, passed from hand to hand across billions of years and lent, for a little while, to you. And here is the strange and beautiful thing, the thing this whole story is about. Your body does not remember any of this the way your mind remembers a birthday. And yet, in another sense, it remembers all of it. It carries the whole history of the universe inside it, written not in thoughts but in atoms, in the elements that make you, in the code coiled in your cells, in the very salt of your blood and the iron that makes it red. You are a record. You are an archive of the cosmos. Every chapter of the universe's long story left something in you, and you carry it still, whether you know it or not. It is worth being careful about the word remember, because it is doing something unusual here, and a story that respects you will say exactly what it means. Your body does not remember the universe the way you remember your childhood. There is no recording in your cells of the Big Bang, no image of an exploding star tucked away in your bones. When we say the body remembers the universe, we mean something more literal and in some ways stranger than a memory. We mean that the body is built from the actual products of the universe's history, that each stage of the cosmic story left physical material behind, and that this material is still in you, carrying its origin not as an image but as a fact. The hydrogen really was made in the first minutes. The carbon really was forged in a star. The iron in your blood really was scattered by an explosion. To remember, in this sense, is not to recall, but to carry, to hold within yourself the actual stuff that the past produced. Your body is a memory, the way a stone worn smooth by a river is a memory of the water, the way the rings of a tree are a memory of the years. The history is not pictured, it is present. It is here, in the matter you are made of. Every atom, a small piece of the past that has lasted into now. This is not a poem. It is, as nearly as anything can be, a literal fact, and it is one of the most astonishing things science has ever uncovered. We are used to thinking of ourselves as separate from the universe, small creatures living on a small planet, looking out at a vast cosmos that has nothing to do with us. But that picture is wrong, and it is wrong in the most fundamental way possible. You are not separate from the universe. You are made of it. You are made of its oldest and its newer parts, the hydrogen from its birth and the heavier elements forged later in the hearts of stars, all gathered together into the temporary, miraculous pattern that is a human body. To understand what you are, you have to understand where your atoms came from. There is something almost vertiginous about taking this seriously, about really letting it land, rather than nodding at it as a nice idea. Look at your own hand. It feels like the most solid, ordinary, familiar thing in the world, unmistakably yours, unmistakably here and now. And it is made entirely of atoms that are billions of years old, atoms that existed before there was an earth for them to belong to, atoms that have been, at various times, parts of stars and oceans and other creatures, atoms that will outlast you by billions of years and become parts of things you cannot imagine. The hand is new. The stuff of the hand is ancient and eternal, on its way through. You are looking, when you look at your hand, at a temporary gathering of some of the oldest material in existence, briefly organized into fingers that can turn these pages. That is not a metaphor or a mood. It is the plain physical truth of what a body is, and once you have seen it, the old sense of being a small separate thing in an alien universe becomes very hard to maintain. You are not in the universe the way a marble is in a box. You are of the universe the way a wave is of the sea. So to understand what you are, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of everything. So that is where we are going. Back to the birth of the universe, to find the oldest thing inside you, and to begin tracing the unbroken thread that runs from the first moment of time to the body reading these words. And it really is unbroken. That is the heart of it. There is no point in the whole history of your atoms where they blinked out of existence and came back, no gap, no break, no fresh creation from nothing. The hydrogen made in the first minutes of the universe has existed every moment since, for nearly 14 billion years, without interruption, travelling a path that leads without a single break to the cells of your body. Trace any hydrogen atom in you backward, and you could, in principle, follow it through every place it has ever been, through the body of whoever drank it before you, through the rain that fell and the rivers that ran and the clouds that gathered, back through the oceans of the early earth, back through the cloud of gas and dust that formed our sun and world, back through the dark between the stars, back to the first minutes of the universe where it was made. The thread never breaks. It runs continuous from the birth of time to you. You are tied to the beginning of everything by a line that was never once cut. Most family trees run out after a few generations, lost in the dark of unrecorded time. This lineage does not run out. It runs all the way back, every link intact, to the first minutes of the universe. It is the longest, oldest, most unbroken inheritance there is, and every living thing shares it, and you carry your portion of it in every cell. Begin at the beginning, as far back as we can see. Nearly 14 billion years ago, the universe was unimaginably hot and unimaginably dense. Everything that now exists packed into a state so extreme that none of the familiar stuff of the world could survive in it. There were no atoms, no stars, no light as we know it, only a searing, expanding fire. And then it cooled. As the universe expanded, it cooled the way any gas cools when it spreads out. And as it cooled, things became possible that had not been possible before. In the first fraction of a second, the basic particles of matter settled out of the chaos. Within the first few minutes, something remarkable happened. Something that left its mark in every cell of your body. The universe was cool enough, for a brief window, to cook the very lightest elements. Protons and neutrons, the building blocks of atomic cores, began to stick together, and in that short window, the cosmos forged the first elements. Hydrogen, the simplest of all, just a single proton, and helium, and a trace of a few others. Then the window closed. The universe expanded and cooled too far for the cooking to continue, and what it had made in those first minutes was the raw material of everything to come, a cosmos filled, overwhelmingly, with hydrogen. This early cooking of the elements has a name, given to it by the physicists who worked out how it must have happened. They realized that the proportions of hydrogen and helium we see in the oldest parts of the universe match, with beautiful precision, what the equations predict should have been made in those first few minutes of cooling. The match is one of the strongest pieces of evidence we have that the universe really did begin in a hot, dense state and expand. The light elements we find scattered through the cosmos are, in effect, the ash of the universe's first few minutes, and the proportions of that ash tell us about the fire that made it. The physicist George Gamow and his colleagues worked out the basics of this in the middle of the last century, predicting that a hot early universe should have left behind a specific recipe of light elements, and a faint afterglow of the original fire still spread across the whole sky. Both predictions came true. When astronomers measured the amounts of hydrogen and helium in the oldest, most pristine gas they could find, the proportions matched the prediction with remarkable accuracy. About 3/4 hydrogen and 1/4 helium by mass, just as the physics of those first minutes requires. And in the 1960s, two researchers stumbled onto the afterglow itself, a faint hiss of microwave radiation coming from every direction in the sky, the cooled remnant of the heat of the early universe, still arriving after nearly 14 billion years. These two discoveries together, the recipe of light elements and the afterglow, are among the strongest reasons we are confident. The universe truly began in a hot, dense state and has been expanding and cooling ever since. The story of your ancient hydrogen is not a guess. It is written across the entire sky and confirmed in the proportions of the oldest gas in existence. That faint afterglow deserves a moment of its own, because it is the universe's own memory, in a sense even more direct than yours. The microwave glow filling the sky is light that has been travelling since the cosmos was only a few 100,000 years old. Light, from the moment the young universe first became clear enough for light to move freely through it. It has been crossing space ever since, for almost the whole age of the universe, and it is arriving now, in this moment, from every direction at once. When astronomers point an instrument at the empty dark between the stars and find that faint, even hiss of warmth, they are receiving a message sent nearly 14 billion years ago, a baby picture of the cosmos, the oldest light there is. The universe remembers its own birth in this light, carries the imprint of its earliest moments across all of time, and lets us read it. So the cosmos itself is an archive, holding the record of its beginning in the oldest light, just as your body holds the record of that same beginning in its oldest atoms. The two memories match. The light that fills the sky and the hydrogen that fills your cells are relics of the same young universe, the same fire, the same first moments, one written in radiation across the heavens and one written in matter in your flesh. And the most important product of that fire, for our purposes, is the hydrogen. Because hydrogen is the element that connects you most directly to the birth of the universe. The timing of all this is almost beyond belief in its precision. For the first tiny fraction of a second, the universe was too hot for even the basic particles to hold together. By about 1 second in, protons and neutrons existed but could not yet stick. The cooking of the light elements happened in a narrow window, roughly between the first minute and the first 20 minutes, when the universe had cooled to the point where protons and neutrons could fuse, but had not yet cooled so far that fusion stopped. 20 minutes. The entire production of the universe's primordial elements, the raw material of everything that would ever exist, was finished in less time than it takes to boil an egg, in the first third of an hour of all of time. After that, the window slammed shut. The universe expanded and thinned and cooled beyond the point where light elements could form, and for a long age nothing more was made. The cosmos coasted, a thin and darkening fog of hydrogen and helium, waiting, though it did not know it was waiting, for gravity to gather it into the first stars. But in that brief early window, the hydrogen that would one day be your body was already made, already finished, already set on its long journey toward you. Almost all the hydrogen that exists, anywhere, was made in those first minutes. None has been made since, in any great quantity. So every hydrogen atom in your body, every one in the water that makes up most of you, every one in the molecules of your flesh, was forged in the infant universe and has existed, unchanged at its core, ever since. Why does hydrogen last so long when so much else changes? Because at its heart a hydrogen atom is the simplest possible thing, a single proton, and the proton is one of the most stable objects in all of nature. As far as any experiment has ever been able to tell, a proton lasts essentially forever. If it decays at all, it does so on timescales so vast they dwarf the current age of the universe beyond all meaning. The proton at the core of each hydrogen atom in you has held together, unbroken, since the first second of time. It has lost and gained electrons countless times, joined and left countless molecules, been water and acid and sugar and tear. But the proton itself, the true core of the atom, the thing that makes it hydrogen, has endured through all of it, the same particle now that it was when the universe was 1 second old. When people speak of something lasting forever, they are usually exaggerating. Here, it is nearly literal. The hydrogen in you is, for all practical purposes, eternal, and it has spent that near eternity travelling toward the moment it became, briefly, part of you. Think about what that means for the simple fact of your physical existence. Your body is mostly water, and water is 2 parts hydrogen to 1 part oxygen. But hydrogen is not only in your water, it is woven through nearly every molecule that makes you. The fats in your cell membranes, the proteins that build your tissues, the sugars that fuel you, the DNA that carries your code, all of them are built on frameworks studded with hydrogen. the most abundant atom in your body and in the universe alike. Roughly 2 of every 3 atoms in you are hydrogen, made in the first minutes of time. You are, by the count of atoms, mostly ancient. The newer, heavier elements give you your structure and your chemistry, but the sheer bulk of your atomic substance, 2 parts in 3, is primordial hydrogen, older than everything, the universe's firstborn matter, gathered into the shape of a person. The hydrogen in every water molecule in you, and there are more water molecules in your body than there are stars in the observable universe, was made in the first 3 minutes of time. When you drink a glass of water, you are drinking hydrogen nearly as old as the cosmos. When you weep, when you sweat, when you bleed, the hydrogen leaving your body is primordial, a relic of the universe's birth passing through you on its endless journey. You are, in large part, a vessel of ancient hydrogen, walking around, thinking, loving, grieving, made possible by atoms that watch the universe begin. The water in your eyes is older than the Sunday. The water on your lips is older than the earth. You carry the birth of the universe inside you, in the most ordinary substance there is, the water that fills your cells and runs in your veins and falls from your eyes when you cry. The numbers involved are past comprehension and worth trying to feel anyway. Your body contains something like 7 billion atoms, a number with 27 zeros, far more atoms than there are stars in the entire observable universe. The overwhelming majority of them are hydrogen, by count, each one a relic of the first minutes of time, and none of them is truly yours. You did not make a single atom in your body. No living thing can. You gathered them from the food you ate and the water you drank and the air you breathed, borrowing them for the span of your life from the great common stock of matter that the universe has been circulating since the beginning. The atoms that are you today were something else a year ago, and will be something else a year from now, passing through you as a river passes through a particular bend, the water always changing, though the shape of the bend stays the same. You are not so much a thing as a pattern, a standing wave in a river of ancient matter, holding its form for a while as the atoms of the universe flow through. And the oldest of those atoms, the hydrogen, has been flowing since time began, through stars and clouds and oceans and countless living bodies, to pause, briefly, as you. But hydrogen alone could never make a body. A human being is far more than hydrogen. You need carbon to build the long molecules of life, oxygen to breathe and to bind your tissues, nitrogen for the code in your cells, calcium for your bones, iron for your blood, phosphorus, sulfur, sodium, potassium, a whole cabinet of heavier elements that the early universe never made. Those first few minutes of cooking produced hydrogen and helium and almost nothing else. The cosmos that emerged from the Big Bang was a simple place, a vast cloud of the 2 lightest elements and little more, with none of the rich chemistry that a living body requires. So if your hydrogen is as old as the universe, where did the rest of you come from? Where were the carbon and the oxygen and the iron made, the heavier elements that the early universe could not cook? They were not there at the beginning. They had to be built later, somewhere, by some furnace hot enough and patient enough to forge them. And the answer to where, the answer to the question of where the heavier elements of your body were made, is one of the great discoveries of the last century. And it is where this story turns next. The short version is that they were made in stars, and not gently. The carbon in your cells, the oxygen you breathe, the nitrogen in your DNA, the calcium in your bones, were forged over millions of years in the searing cores of stars, built up one nuclear step at a time from the simple hydrogen the early universe provided. And the heaviest elements in you, the iron that reddens your blood among them, required something even more violent, the death of a star, the explosion that scatters a lifetime of forged elements across space in a single catastrophic moment, every heavier atom in your body pass through that kind of fire, you are not only made of the universe's first breath of hydrogen, you are made too of the ash of stars that lived and died before the sun was born, of elements cooked in stellar furnaces and flung out in stellar deaths, gathered across billions of years into the cloud that became our world, and eventually you, the hydrogen, ties you to the birth of the universe. The rest of you ties you to the births and deaths of stars. And that is the next chapter of what your body remembers. But hold, for now, on to the hydrogen, the oldest thing in you, the thread that runs straight back to the birth of time. Long before any of this was known, people sensed that the human body was somehow made of the same stuff as the wider world, that we were not separate from the cosmos but formed from it, kneaded out of the same material as the earth and the stars. The old stories of many peoples say that the first human was made from dust, from clay, from the earth itself, shaped from ordinary matter and then given life, so that a person is, in the words of one ancient tradition, dust that has come briefly alive and will return to dust again. Other traditions taught that the human being is a small model of the whole universe, a miniature cosmos containing within itself, in small, everything that the great cosmos contains in large, the same elements, the same forces, the same order. They had no chemistry, no physics, no way to trace an atom back to the birth of the universe. But they had looked at the body and at the world and felt, correctly, that the two were made of one substance. The image of the human being formed from earth runs through tradition after tradition. In the Hebrew account, the first human is shaped from the dust of the ground and given the breath of life, and the very name of that first human is bound up with the word for earth, so that the human being is, in a sense, the earth that has stood up and begun to breathe. The same scripture has the human being told that dust he is and to dust he shall return, a recognition that the body is borrowed earth, lent for a lifetime and then given back. Other traditions tell of humanity shaped from clay by divine hands, kneaded out of ordinary matter and then quickened into life. And running alongside these is an even older and stranger intuition, the idea of the human being as a microcosm, a little cosmos, a small whole that mirrors the great whole. The thinkers who held this idea believed that the same elements which make up the wider world make up the body, that the same order which governs the stars governs the person, that to look closely at a human being is to see the entire universe reflected in miniature. They meant it as a deep truth about the structure of reality, that the part contains the pattern of the whole. They could not have known that it is, in the most literal chemical sense, correct, that the body is built from the very elements the cosmos made, that you are the universe in small, because you are made of the universe. The intuition reached the truth long before the instruments could confirm it. We are made of the world, and the oldest traditions felt it, and the newest science has proved it down to the atom. The science has now traced exactly how, but the feeling came first, and the feeling was true. You are made of the universe. You always were. And the proof of it is written in your atoms, beginning with the ancient hydrogen that the cosmos made in its first few minutes and lent, at last, to you. So this is the first chapter of the story your body remembers, the oldest thing it carries. Before the earth, before the sun, before a single star had formed, the universe made hydrogen, and that hydrogen is in you now, holding up the water in your cells, riding in the molecules of your flesh, as old as time and still going. You did not make it, you only borrowed it, as everything alive has borrowed it, for the brief span of a life, before passing it on. It is the first thread, the deepest root, the part of you that reaches furthest back into the dark, and it is only the beginning, because the rest of you, the carbon and the calcium and the iron, the heavier stuff that the early universe could not make, has a story just as astonishing. forged not in the birth of the cosmos but in the lives and deaths of stars. That is where we go next, out into the furnaces that made the rest of you, to follow the thread forward from the birth of the universe to the birth of the elements that let a body exist at all. Right now, your blood is red because a star exploded. Hold still and feel your pulse, the blood moving through you, carrying oxygen to every cell. It is red because of iron, an atom of iron sitting at the heart of the molecule that grabs the oxygen and carries it through your body. Without that iron, you would suffocate in minutes. And that iron, every atom of it, was made in the death of a star. Not in its quiet life, not in the gentle furnace of an ordinary sun, but in a catastrophe, an explosion so violent it briefly outshone an entire galaxy, scattering across space the elements forged in a star's final moments. The iron that reddens your blood was flung out of a dying star billions of years before the Earth existed, drifted through the dark, gathered into the cloud that became our world, and worked, over the long ages, into the blood now moving through your veins. You are walking around with the wreckage of an exploded star inside you, and it is keeping you alive with every heartbeat. And it is not only your blood. The calcium that makes your bones hard enough to stand on, the bones that hold you upright and let you move through the world, was forged in stars too. When you feel your own skeleton, the solid frame beneath your flesh, you are feeling stellar ash, calcium built in the cores of stars and scattered in their deaths, gathered into the structure that holds you up. The breath in your lungs carries star-forged oxygen. The thoughts in your head fire across cells built on star-forged carbon. There is no part of you that escaped this origin, no corner of your body that was not, at some point, inside a star or scattered from one. You are stellar through and through, from the iron in your blood to the calcium in your bones to the carbon in your brain, a walking, breathing, thinking gathering of the elements that stars forge and scatter. The wreckage of dead stars is not just inside you, it is you, your whole physical substance, assembled from the leavings of the cosmos. How did it get there? The early universe, as we saw, made almost nothing but hydrogen and helium, the two lightest elements. It could not make iron. It could not make carbon, or oxygen, or calcium, or any of the heavier atoms a living body needs. Those simply did not exist in the young cosmos. The universe began far too simple to build a person. So where did they come from? Something had to make them, somewhere, after the beginning, building the heavier elements up from the light ones the Big Bang provided. And whatever made them had to be hot enough, and patient enough, and powerful enough to fuse simple atoms into complex ones, and then to scatter what it made across space so that it could one day gather into worlds and into bodies. The answer is the stars. Every element heavier than the two lightest was made inside stars, forged in their cores over millions of years or in the violence of their deaths, and then scattered into space to become the raw material of everything that came after, including you. The carbon in your cells, the oxygen in your breath, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, were all made in stars. You are, in the most literal sense, made of star stuff, and the universe has been recycling this star stuff for billions of years, building and unbuilding, scattering and gathering, over and over. A star forms, lives, forges elements, dies, and scatters them. Those elements gather into a new cloud, which forms new stars, which forge more elements and scatter them in turn. Each generation of stars enriches the universe a little more, building up the supply of heavy elements from almost nothing in the early cosmos to the rich mixture we have today. Our sun is a relatively late arrival, a star of a later generation, born from gas already enriched by many earlier stellar lives and deaths. That is why the Earth has so many heavy elements, and why a body as chemically complex as yours is possible at all. You could not have existed in the early universe. There simply were not enough heavy elements yet. It took billions of years of stars living and dying, enriching the cosmos generation by generation, to build up the raw material for a planet like the Earth and a creature like you. You are a product of deep time, of the patient accumulation of star-forged elements across the whole history of the universe. So let us see exactly how it happened, and what it means that your body is built from the lives and deaths of suns. This is the second chapter of the story your body carries, and it is, if anything, stranger than the first. The hydrogen tied you to the birth of the universe. The heavier elements tie you to the stars themselves, to their long lives and their violent ends, to a process of creation that has been running for billions of years and is running still, in the sky above you, at this very moment. Every heavy atom in you has a biography, a history of where it was made and how it travelled to reach you, and that biography runs through the heart of a star. To understand what you are made of, you have to understand how stars build elements, how they live and die, and how the stuff they make finds its way, across unimaginable distances and spans of time, into the body of a human being. So let us go inside a star, into the furnace where the elements of your body were forged. What happens there is a kind of alchemy that the old alchemists could only dream of. They spent centuries trying to turn one element into another, to make gold from lesser metals, and they always failed, because the transformation they sought is impossible by any chemistry, any mixing or heating or combining of substances in a laboratory. To change one element into another, you have to reach into the very core of the atom and rearrange it, and that requires temperatures and pressures found nowhere on Earth, only in the hearts of stars. There, in heat of millions of degrees and pressure beyond imagining, atomic cores are slammed together hard enough to merge, and one element genuinely becomes another, hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into still heavier things. This is real transmutation, the actual transformation of one element into another, happening constantly in every star in the sky. The alchemists were not wrong that elements can be transformed into one another. They were only looking in the wrong place. The transmutation they sought happens in the stars, and it made the very elements they were made of, and the elements you are made of too. A star is, at its core, a furnace for building elements. It begins, as we saw, as a cloud of hydrogen pulled together by gravity until its center grows so hot and so crushed that hydrogen atoms begin to fuse, slamming together to form helium and releasing, in the process, the enormous energy that makes the star shine. This is the long, steady life of a star, the patient fusing of hydrogen into helium, the stage our own sun is in now, and has been in for billions of years, and will remain in for billions more. But this is only the beginning of what a star can build. When a star has used up the hydrogen in its core, the core contracts and heats further, and at the higher temperature, a new kind of fusion becomes possible. Helium begins to fuse into heavier elements. 3 helium cores can come together to make carbon, the element on which all of life is built. Add another and you get oxygen, the element you breathe. As a star ages and its core grows hotter, it works its way up the ladder of elements, fusing lighter atoms into heavier ones, building carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, neon, magnesium, silicon. Each new stage requiring more heat than the last, each forging elements that did not exist before. The star is a kind of cosmic blacksmith, hammering simple atoms into complex ones in the heat of its core, and the elements of your body are what it makes. And the pace of this forging tells you something about the urgency of a star's final days. A massive star spends millions of years calmly fusing hydrogen into helium, the long bulk of its life. But each later stage runs faster than the one before, because each heavier fuel gives less energy and burns out sooner. Fusing helium into carbon and oxygen might take a few 100,000 years. The next stages take centuries, then years. Near the very end, a massive star can burn through entire stages of fusion in a matter of days, building silicon into iron in its final day or two. racing through the last rungs of the element ladder at a frantic pace as it approaches its death. By the end, such a star is layered like an onion, with shells of different elements burning at different depths, the heaviest in the center and the lightest at the surface, hydrogen still fusing in the outer layers while iron piles up in the core. Inside that layered furnace, in those final frantic days, the star forges the last of the elements your body would one day need, working at a speed that mirrors how close it is to the end. The details of how this works were one of the great achievements of 20th century science, worked out by a handful of astronomers and physicists who realized that the stars are where the elements come from. One famous paper, published in the late 1950s by a team of 4 researchers, laid out in detail how stars build up the elements step by step, fusion by fusion, and it remains one of the foundational works of modern astronomy. They showed that nearly every element heavier than helium could be accounted for by processes inside stars, that the whole rich variety of the chemical world, the carbon and oxygen and iron and gold, could be traced to nuclear reactions in stellar cores and stellar deaths. One of those researchers later became famous for putting the idea into words that everyone could feel, that the nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood were all made in the interiors of collapsing stars, and that we are therefore made of star stuff. It became one of the most beloved sentences in all of science, repeated countless times since, because it captures something true and astonishing in a handful of words, that the most ordinary parts of us, our teeth, our blood, the code in our cells, have an extraordinary origin, forged in the most powerful furnaces the universe contains. It was a scientific claim, precise and testable, and it turned out to be true. The elements of life are the ash of stars, and we are built from that ash. Every one of us. Walk through your own body and you can locate the stars in it. The carbon that forms the backbone of every protein, every fat, every strand of your DNA, the element that makes life's chemistry possible at all, was fused in stellar cores from helium. The oxygen that makes up most of your body's weight, that you breathe with every breath and that binds your tissues together, was forged the same way. The nitrogen woven through your DNA and your proteins came from stars. The calcium that hardens your bones and teeth, that lets your muscles contract and your nerves fire, was built in stellar furnaces. The phosphorus that forms the rungs of your genetic code and carries energy through every cell was made in stars. The sodium and potassium that fire your every thought, the sulfur that folds your proteins into shape, the iron that reddens your blood, all of it forged in the lives and deaths of stars. There is hardly a function your body performs that does not depend on some element a star made. Your bones are stellar. Your blood is stellar. Your thoughts run on stellar chemistry. You are not made of star stuff in some vague poetic way. You are made of specific elements, each with a stellar address, each forged in a particular kind of cosmic fire, and each doing a particular job in keeping you alive. There is a beautiful and delicate fact hidden in this process, one that has made physicists marvel for decades. The step that builds carbon, the element at the foundation of all life, is unexpectedly difficult. For 3 helium cores to come together and form carbon, the timing and the energies have to be almost impossibly precise, and for a while it seemed the reaction should be far too rare to produce the carbon the universe actually contains. It works only because of a remarkable coincidence in the inner structure of the carbon nucleus, a special state that sits at exactly the right energy to let the reaction proceed, almost as if the nucleus were tuned to make carbon possible. The astronomer who predicted this special state must exist, reasoning that it had to be there because carbon and therefore we exist, was so struck by the precision that he wondered aloud whether the universe looked arranged. Whatever one makes of that, the fact remains. The carbon in your body, the backbone of every molecule of life in you, exists because of an exquisite fine adjustment in the heart of the atom, without which stars could not have made it and you could not be here. Your existence hangs on a coincidence in the structure of carbon, forged in the cores of stars, and this is where the idea of the body as a memory takes on real weight. The mix of elements in your body is not random. It is a record of the cosmic processes that made them, readable, in principle, like the layers of rock in a canyon wall that record the ages of the Earth. The fact that you contain far more oxygen than gold is a memory of how stars work, of which elements they make easily and which only rarely. The particular proportions of carbon and nitrogen and iron and calcium in a human body reflect the whole history of stellar nucleosynthesis, the entire long process by which the universe built up its elements from the simple hydrogen of the beginning. Your body's chemistry is a kind of fossil, not of any single creature, but of the cosmos itself, of the stars that lived and died to make the elements you are built from. To analyze the elements in a human body is to read a summary of cosmic history, of what the universe has done in its nearly 14 billion years of forging matter. You do not remember the stars the way you remember a face, but your body holds the record of them, written in the very proportions of the atoms that make you, a memory of stellar fire kept in flesh. But the star's element-building ladder does not go on forever. As the star fuses heavier and heavier elements, it builds toward iron, and at iron the ladder stops. Iron is the most stable of the elements, the bottom of the energy well, and fusing iron into anything heavier does not release energy but absorbs it. When a massive star's core turns to iron, it has reached the end of what fusion can give it. The furnace that held the star up against its own gravity falters because iron will not burn. There is a terrible elegance in this. All through its life, the star is a balance, the outward push of the energy from fusion, holding up against the relentless inward pull of its own gravity. As long as there is fuel to fuse, the balance holds, and the star shines steadily, sometimes for billions of years. But iron breaks the balance, because fusing iron takes energy rather than releasing it. The moment the core becomes iron, the outward push fails, and gravity, which has been waiting patiently the whole life of the star, finally wins. The collapse is almost instantaneous, the core falling inward in less than a second, and from that sudden fall comes the explosion that scatters the star's elements across space. So the very element that ends the star, iron, is also the element that fills your blood. The atom that doomed the star is the atom that lets you breathe, the iron in your red blood cells grabbing the oxygen and carrying it through your body. The star died because of iron. You live because of it. The same atom, made in the same fire, ending one story and enabling another, and in that moment the star is doomed. The core, no longer held up by the energy of fusion, collapses in on itself in a fraction of a second, and the outer layers come crashing down and rebound in a titanic explosion, a supernova, one of the most violent events in the universe, briefly outshining billions of ordinary stars. And here is the crucial thing for your body. In the searing heat and crushing pressure of that explosion, elements heavier than iron are made, the gold and the silver and the rest, forged in the blast itself. And all of it, everything the star built in its life and everything the explosion makes in its death, is flung out into space, scattered across light years, seeding the surrounding clouds with the elements of life. The violence of this is hard to overstate. In the final collapse, the core of the star falls inward at a fair fraction of the speed of light, crushing matter to densities beyond anything that exists on Earth. And the rebound and the blast that follow release in seconds, more energy than the sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year lifetime. For a few weeks, a single exploding star can shine as brightly as all the hundreds of billions of stars in its galaxy combined. And in that inferno, the heaviest and rarest elements are born, the ones that even the star's long life could not make. Some of the gold and silver and other heavy metals scattered through the universe were forged in these explosions, and some, we have learned only recently, in even more extreme events, the collisions of the ultra-dense corpses that some stars leave behind, crashes so violent they ring the fabric of space itself. The gold in a wedding ring, the precious metals we have prized for all of human history, were made in cosmic catastrophes of unimaginable violence, and then scattered and gathered and worked at last into the earth and into our hands. Every heavy atom you carry, every atom heavier than iron, was made in one of the most violent events the universe knows how to produce, and then travelled, calm and unhurried, for billions of years to become a quiet part of you. So picture the journey your atoms took. A massive star, somewhere in our galaxy, billions of years ago, lives its long life fusing hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon and oxygen, working up the ladder of elements, building in its core the carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and calcium that your body would one day need. Then it dies, exploding, scattering all of it into space, along with the iron from its core and the heavier elements forged in the blast. That enriched gas, carrying the elements of life, drifts through space and mixes with other clouds, themselves enriched by other dead stars, until the mixture is rich enough in heavy elements to make not just new stars but planets and, eventually, living things. Around 4.5 billion years ago, one such enriched cloud collapsed to form our sun, and the leftover material gathered into the planets, including the Earth, carrying with it the carbon and oxygen and iron and calcium that countless dead stars had made. Those elements became part of the young Earth, worked into its rocks and seas and air. Life arose and took them up, building bodies from them, passing them down through billions of years of living things, until at last they were gathered into you. The carbon in your cells was made in a star, scattered in its death, gathered into the earth and built into your body. It is a journey of billions of years and unimaginable distances, ending in the hand that holds this book. And it was not one star that made you, but many. The cloud that formed our sun and earth was enriched by the deaths of countless stars over billions of years, generation after generation of stars living and dying, and seeding the gas with their forged elements before our own sun ever caught fire. So the atoms in your body did not come from a single source. The carbon in your left hand and the carbon in your right might have been made in different stars, scattered by different explosions, separated once by distances beyond imagining, brought together at last in the same body. You are a gathering place for the products of many stars, an assembly of atoms from across the galaxy and across cosmic time, drawn together into one living pattern. When you look at the night sky and see those scattered points of light, you are looking at the kind of thing you are made of, the furnaces and the graveyards where your atoms were forged. They are not strangers to you, those distant lights. They are something closer to ancestors. You are made of stars exactly like the ones you are looking at, stars that lived and died so that the elements of your body could exist. The old traditions could not have known any of this, the fusion ladders and the exploding stars and the scattered ash gathering into worlds. But again and again they sensed the kinship between the human being and the heavens, and spoke of it in their own ways. Some taught that the human being is made of the same elements as the stars and shares in their nature, that there is something celestial woven into our substance. Some looked up at the night sky and felt not separation but belonging, a sense that we come from up there, that our true home and origin lie among the lights of heaven. Some traditions held that the soul descends from the stars at birth and returns to them at death, that we are visitors from the sky briefly clothed in earthly bodies. They had no telescopes, no understanding of fusion, no way to know that the iron in their blood was forged in stellar fire. But they looked at the stars and felt that we are related to them, that we come from them, that our origin is written in the heavens. And the science, when it finally traced the journey of our atoms, found that the feeling was right in a way more literal than the ancients could have dreamed. The ancient stargazers of many lands wove the heavens into the story of human origins. Some peoples told of descending from the stars, of a celestial ancestry, of the first humans coming down from the sky. The thinkers of the classical Mediterranean spoke of a heavenly element in the human soul, a spark of the same fire that burns in the stars, and taught that the wise person, at death, returns to that starry home. Across many cultures, the dead were imagined as becoming stars, taking their place among the lights of heaven, as though the human being and the star were made of one substance and could pass from one form to the other. In some traditions, the very breath of life was thought to come from above, from the sky, from the celestial realm, a heavenly gift animating the earthly body. These were not scientific claims, and they took many forms, some of them mythological, some philosophical. But beneath the variety runs a single recurring intuition, that the human being is kin to the stars, that we come from the heavens, that there is something of the sky in us. They felt the connection without being able to prove it. And the science of stellar nucleosynthesis, tracing the iron in our blood and the calcium in our bones back to the cores and the deaths of stars, has now shown that the intuition was astonishingly correct. We really are kin to the stars. We really did come from the heavens. The element of the sky really is in us, in the most literal possible sense, in the star-forged atoms that make our bodies. We do come from the stars. The iron in your blood was made in one. The feeling of kinship with the night sky is not sentiment, it is recognition. There is a strange dignity in this that is worth pausing on. We are used to thinking of the body as humble, even lowly, a thing of flesh and appetite and decay, the part of us that gets sick and tired and old. The mind, the soul, the spirit, these we exalt. The body we often disparage, treating it as the mere container for the things that really matter. But the body, looked at rightly, is anything but lowly. It is built from the rarest and most hard-won material in the universe, elements forged across billions of years in the hearts and deaths of stars, gathered from across the galaxy, assembled into a structure of staggering intricacy. Your body is, by any measure, one of the most remarkable things the universe has made, a place where star-forged elements have come together into something that can breathe and move and think and love and look back up at the stars it came from. To hold your own hand, to feel your own pulse, is to touch the cosmos at its most refined matter that has travelled an unimaginable road to become, for a while, a living person. The body is not the lowly part of you. It is the part of you that is most directly made of stars. So this is the second chapter of what your body remembers, the chapter written in the heavier elements, in the carbon and oxygen and calcium and iron, that no early universe could make and only a star could forge. You are built from the ash of stars that died before the sun was born, from elements hammered together in stellar cores and scattered in stellar deaths, gathered across billions of years into the living pattern that is you. Every heartbeat moves star-forged iron through your veins. Every breath draws star-forged oxygen into your lungs. Every thought fires through cells built on star-forged carbon. You are not merely made of the universe, you are made of its most dramatic events, its stellar lives and stellar deaths, the violence and the patience of the cosmos written into the quiet substance of your body. And yet, even this is not the whole story, because the elements alone are not a body. A pile of carbon and oxygen and iron is not alive. Something had to take these star-forged elements and arrange them into the intricate, living, remembering thing that is a human being, and that arranging is its own astonishing story, a story of how dead matter became living matter, and how a body came to carry, in its very code, a memory billions of years deep. That is where we go next. Not one cell in your body has ever come from non-living matter. Think about that for a moment, because it is stranger than it sounds. Every single cell in you was born when another living cell divided in two, and that parent cell was itself born from another living cell, which came from another and another, in a chain of living cells passing life from one to the next, never once broken, never once starting over from dead matter, stretching back through your childhood, back before your birth, back through your mother and her mother and every ancestor you have ever had, back through the first humans, back through the creatures that came before them, back and back and back, nearly 4 billion years, to the first living cells that ever existed on the young Earth. The chain has never broken. Life has been handed from cell to cell, parent to child, in an unbroken line for almost 4 billion years, and you are the current end of that line. The life in you was not created when you were conceived. It was passed to you, alive, from your parents, who received it alive from theirs, in a relay that has been running, without a single break, since life on Earth began. Sit with one consequence of this because it is genuinely strange. The cells that became you came directly from your parents' bodies, and those cells were never dead. The line of cells leading to you has been continuously alive for nearly 4 billion years. Not one link in that chain ever died and came back. If it had, the chain would have ended there. This means there is a sense in which the living substance in you has never died, not once in the entire history of life on Earth. Your body will die, the particular arrangement that is you will end, but the germ line, the line of cells that carries life forward to the next generation, has flowed unbroken and alive from the first cells to you, and if you have children, will flow on past you to them. Life, looked at this way, is a single continuous thing, nearly 4 billion years old, that has never once stopped being alive, branching and flowing through countless temporary bodies, including, for now, yours. You are not separate from that ancient living stream. You are a place where it flows, briefly, before passing on. And here is what makes this the heart of the whole story. We have talked about how your body carries the universe in its atoms, the ancient hydrogen of the Big Bang, the heavier elements forged in stars. But atoms do not truly remember anything. They carry their origin, but they hold no record, no information, no message. With life, something new enters the story, because a living cell does carry a record. It carries instructions, written in a molecular code, passed down from cell to cell across the entire history of life. A set of information so old and so faithfully copied that parts of it have survived, almost unchanged, for billions of years. This is your DNA. And it is not a metaphor to call it a memory. It is a literal record, an actual archive of information, written in a chemical alphabet and inherited, letter by letter, from the very first life on Earth. When we said your body remembers the universe, the atoms were carrying the universe's substance. But the DNA is carrying the universe's information, the accumulated record of nearly 4 billion years of life, written into every cell of your body. Your body does not just contain ancient matter, it contains an ancient message. Think about what a memory really is. A memory is information from the past, preserved into the present, that can shape what happens next. Your DNA fits this perfectly. It is information, the instructions for building a living thing. It is from the past, copied down from ancestors across billions of years. It is preserved into the present, present in every one of your cells right now, and it shapes what happens next, directing the building and running of your body moment by moment. By any reasonable definition, your DNA is a memory, not a metaphorical one, but a real one, the longest and most faithfully kept record on Earth. And it is a memory not of your own life, but of all life, of the entire lineage that led to you, written in a code so stable that some of its sentences have been preserved, almost word for word, since before there were animals. When a scientist compares your DNA with that of a bacterium and finds passages that match, they are reading a memory that has been kept, unbroken, for billions of years, a message written by the earliest life and copied faithfully into you. That message is the closest thing to a real memory that any physical object can hold. So this is the third chapter of what your body remembers, and it is a different kind of remembering from the first two. The hydrogen and the heavier elements were memory as substance, the actual stuff of the past carried into the present. The DNA is memory as information, a record that can be read, a message that has been kept and copied and handed down across an almost unimaginable span of time. To understand it, we have to look at what DNA actually is, how old it really is, and what it means that you carry, in every cell, a library of instructions written by life itself across billions of years. Because the story your DNA tells is not just the story of you, it is the story of all life, the whole long history of living things, recorded in a code you share, in its deepest parts, with every creature that has ever lived. So let us read what is written in you. DNA is, at its simplest, a set of instructions written in a 4-letter alphabet. The letters are 4 small molecules, and the order in which they are strung along the great spiraling thread of the DNA molecule spells out, in a kind of chemical writing, the instructions for building and running a living thing. Every cell in your body contains a complete copy of these instructions, your entire genetic code, coiled up so tightly that a length of DNA, which would stretch for meters if unwound, is packed into a space too small to see. And the most astonishing thing about this code, the thing that took the world by surprise when it was discovered, is that it is essentially the same code in every living thing, the same 4 letters, the same basic rules for how the letters spell out the building blocks of life. A bacterium, an oak tree, a mushroom, a whale, and you all use the same fundamental genetic code, the same molecular alphabet, the same basic machinery for reading it. This is not a small fact. It is one of the deepest clues we have about the history of life, and it points to a single staggering conclusion, that all life on Earth is related, that every living thing descends from a common ancestor. The strength of this evidence is hard to overstate. There is no obvious reason the code had to be the same in all living things. In principle, different lineages of life could have used different genetic codes, different molecular alphabets, different rules, the way different human languages use different words and scripts. If life had arisen many separate times, or if the code were arbitrary, we would expect to find a variety of codes across the living world. Instead, we find one. The same 4 letters spell out life in a bacterium living in a hot spring, in the mold on old bread, in the redwood and the blue whale and the human being. A gene from one organism can often be read and used by another, even one wildly different, because they share the same code, the same fundamental language of life. This near universal sharing is exactly what we would expect if all life descended from a single common ancestor and inherited its code, and it is very hard to explain any other way. The unity of the genetic code is the fingerprint of the kinship of all living things, the sign that the redwood and the whale and the bacterium and you are all branches of one tree, all reading from one inherited book, all descended from one ancient root. The shared code is the inheritance passed down from that root to all its descendants, across nearly 4 billion years. Scientists have a name for that common ancestor, or rather for the population of early cells from which all later life descends. They call it the last universal common ancestor, the single root of the entire tree of life, the ancient organism, or community of organisms, from which bacteria and oak trees and whales and human beings all eventually descend. We do not know exactly what it was like, but we can read clues to its nature in the things all living things still share, the genes and molecular machines so universal that they must have been present in that common ancestor and inherited by everything since. And what those shared features tell us is that the basic machinery of life, the systems for reading the genetic code, for building proteins, for storing and using energy, was already in place nearly 4 billion years ago and has been passed down, with modifications, to every living thing since. You are running in your cells machinery that is almost 4 billion years old, inherited in an unbroken line from the dawn of life. The deepest parts of you are ancient beyond comprehension, older than the continents in their present form. How life first began, how the leap was made from non-living chemistry to the first living, reproducing cell, remains one of the great unsolved questions of science, and honesty requires admitting we do not fully know. Somewhere on the early Earth, perhaps near volcanic vents in the deep sea, perhaps in warm pools at the surface, the right chemistry came together, molecules that could copy themselves arose, and at some point, the line was crossed from complex chemistry to life. We do not know exactly how or where or when, though we know it happened early, within the first billion years of the Earth's existence, remarkably soon after the planet cooled enough to allow it. But whatever the details, one thing is clear. It happened, as far as we can tell, once. All life we know descends from that single origin, sharing the same code, the same machinery, the same root. From that one beginning, nearly 4 billion years ago, an unbroken line of life has flowed to every living thing today, including you. The origin itself is shrouded in mystery, but the unbroken descent from it is written plainly in the shared code of all life, and you are part of that descent, carrying in your cells the inheritance of that ancient and singular beginning. Consider one piece of that inherited machinery, perhaps the most important of all. In every cell of every living thing, there is a molecular machine that reads the genetic code and builds proteins from it, the proteins that do almost all the work of life. This machine is essentially the same in you as it is in a bacterium, its core so similar across all living things that it must have been present, in nearly its modern form, in the common ancestor of all life. It is one of the oldest and most conserved structures in biology, a machine that has been doing the same essential job, in fundamentally the same way, for nearly 4 billion years, copied faithfully from cell to cell across the entire history of life. And it is working in your cells right now, building the proteins that keep you alive, exactly as it built them in the first cells on the young Earth. When you carry out the basic chemistry of being alive, you are using inventions almost as old as life itself, molecular machines perfected before there were animals or plants or any complex life at all, inherited from ancestors so ancient they had no bodies, no cells, as we would recognize them, nothing but the basic chemistry of life. Getting started. The oldest technology on Earth is running inside you, and it has never stopped running, in your line, for 4 billion years. It is worth pausing to be clear about what this kind of memory is and is not, because here, more than anywhere, the truth can be twisted into something false. The memory in your DNA is a real record of inheritance, the accumulated information passed down through the generations. It is not a record of your ancestors' experiences, their thoughts, their feelings, their memories in the everyday sense. Your DNA does not remember your grandmother's wedding or your distant ancestors' fears. It carries the instructions that were selected over countless generations, not the lived experiences of the individuals who carried them. There are real and fascinating ways that the environment of one generation can leave certain marks that influence the next, a field still being carefully explored, but this is a far more limited thing than the popular fantasy of inherited memories of past lives or ancestral experiences passed down whole. The science does not support that fantasy, and we will not pretend it does. What the science does support is remarkable enough on its own that you carry, in your genes, a 4 billion year record of life's inheritance. The instructions refined across the entire history of living things, present in every cell. That is a real memory, of a real and astonishing kind. It does not need to be inflated into something it is not. And inside your cells there is an even stranger relic, a passenger from the deep past that you carry in every cell of your body. Your cells are powered by tiny structures that turn food and oxygen into usable energy, the power plants of the cell. And these power plants were once, billions of years ago, free-living bacteria. Long ago, the ancestor of all complex life swallowed one of these bacteria and, instead of digesting it, kept it, and the two became partners, the bacterium providing energy and the host providing shelter, until over time the bacterium became a permanent part of the cell. This idea, strange as it sounds, is now well established, and the evidence is striking. These little power plants still carry their own small loop of DNA, separate from the DNA in the cell's nucleus, a remnant of their bacterial past. So inside every cell of your body are the descendants of ancient bacteria, with their own ancient DNA, swallowed billions of years ago and never released, still doing the job they did when they lived free, now keeping you alive. You are not a single thing. You are a collaboration, a merger of ancient lineages, carrying within your cells the living descendants of bacteria that struck a bargain with your ancestors billions of years ago. The history of that ancient partnership is not recorded in a book. It is alive in you, in every cell, powering every thought and every movement. And these little power plants carry a memory of a more personal kind. Because of the way they are inherited, the DNA in your cellular power plants comes almost entirely from your mother, and from her mother, and from her mother before that, passed down the maternal line, largely unchanged. By reading this DNA, scientists can trace the line of mothers back through the generations, and following it back far enough, the lines of all living humans converge on a single woman who lived in Africa long ago, a common maternal ancestor of everyone alive today. She was not the only woman alive in her time, but she is the one whose maternal line never broke, who has an unbroken chain of daughters reaching all the way to the present, to every human now living. You carry her legacy in the power plants of your cells, a memory of an unbroken line of mothers stretching back tens of thousands of years to a single woman in ancient Africa. Every person you have ever met carries the same inheritance, the same unbroken maternal line back to the same ancient mother. In the power plants of your cells, you carry a memory of her and of every mother in the unbroken chain between. There is another place the deep past shows itself, and it is worth approaching carefully, because it is easy to overstate. As an embryo, in the weeks after conception, the human body passes through stages that carry faint echoes of our evolutionary history. Early in development, the human embryo has a set of structures in the neck region that resemble, in their basic form, features that in fish become gills, and that in us are reshaped into parts of the jaw, the throat, and the inner ear. The early embryo has a small tail, which in most people is later mostly absorbed, leaving only the tailbone at the base of the spine. These are real features of human development, and they reflect, in a genuine way, our descent from creatures very different from ourselves. It would be wrong to say, as people once did in an oversimplified way, that the embryo simply replays the whole history of evolution stage by stage, like a speeded-up film of our ancestors. That old idea was too crude and has been corrected. But something real remains. The development of the body bears traces of its evolutionary past, structures that make sense only as inheritances from distant ancestors, reshaped by development into new uses. The bones of your inner ear, which let you hear, are descended from bones that were once part of the jaw, and before that, in our deep ancestry, part of the structures that supported gills. Your body, as it builds itself, follows instructions that carry the marks of the long road that led to you. The story of the inner ear bones is worth telling on its own, because it is one of the most beautiful in all of biology. Deep in your ear are 3 tiny bones, the smallest bones in your body, that pass the vibrations of sound from your eardrum inwards so that you can hear. Where did they come from? By tracing the fossil record and the development of the embryo, Scientists have followed these little bones back through deep time, and the answer is astonishing. They were once part of the jaw of our distant reptile-like ancestors, and before that parts of the apparatus that supported the gills of our fish ancestors. Over hundreds of millions of years, as our lineage changed, these bones migrated and shrank and were repurposed, from gill support to jaw to the delicate machinery of hearing. The fact that you can hear a voice, or music, or your own name, depends on bones that were once gills, reshaped across an immensity of time into instruments of hearing. Your body, building those bones in the developing embryo, follows an ancient inherited blueprint, repurposing the old structures of fish and reptile ancestors into the means by which you hear the world. The deep past is not gone. It is in your ear, letting you hear. And the marks are everywhere, once you know to look. The small bone at the base of your spine is the remnant of a tail your distant ancestors had. The muscles that give you goosebumps, making the tiny hairs on your skin stand up when you are cold or afraid, are a leftover from ancestors with thick fur, in whom those muscles fluffed the coat for warmth or made the animal look larger. In you, with your sparse body hair, they do almost nothing, a reflex inherited from a furred past. Even your genetic code carries fossils. Scattered through your DNA are the remains of ancient viruses, infections that struck your ancestors millions of years ago and left their genetic material lodged in the genome, where it has been copied and passed down ever since, a record of ancient plagues written into the very code of life. You carry in your DNA the scars of diseases that afflicted creatures that lived millions of years before you. Your body is a layered record of its own deep history. Scientists can now read this record directly. By comparing the DNA of different living things, they can reconstruct the tree of life, tracing which creatures are more closely related, and roughly when their lineages diverged, all from the patterns of similarity and difference in the genetic code. Your genome is a document that can be read, and what it tells is the story of your descent, of the long line of ancestors that led to you, written in the language of DNA. It records the ancient split between your lineage and that of bacteria, the later branching that led to animals, the divergence of your line from that of other apes, the whole long genealogy of life encoded in the letters of your genes. A skilled reader of the genome can find in it the marks of ancient events, population bottlenecks where your ancestors nearly died out, mixtures with other human lineages now vanished, the genetic signatures of adaptations to ancient climates and diseases. Your DNA is not a blank set of instructions. It is a historical document, a record of everything that happened to the long line of life that produced you, marked everywhere by the road it travelled, the tail it lost, the fur it shed, the gills that became ears, the viruses that left their mark, all of it preserved, all of it readable, all of it carried in the living, remembering substance of you. The old traditions had no knowledge of DNA or evolution or the common ancestry of life, but several of them circled, in their own ways, around the idea that the deepest knowledge is somehow already within us, inherited, remembered, rather than learned. One ancient philosopher taught that learning is really a form of remembering, that the soul already knows the deepest truths, and that to learn is to recall what was always within. Several traditions held that we carry within us the accumulated inheritance of those who came before, that the past is not gone but lives on in us, that we are shaped by ancestors we never met, and carry their mark whether we know it or not. Some spoke of an inner record, a kind of memory deeper than the personal, holding the imprint of long ages. They meant these ideas in spiritual and philosophical ways, and we should not pretend they were talking about genetics, but the underlying intuition that we carry within us a memory older than our own lives, an inheritance from the deep past that shapes us, though we never consciously learned it, turns out to have a startling literal counterpart. We do carry such a memory. It is written in our DNA, inherited from ancestors across billions of years, shaping us through instructions we never learned and could not consciously recall, yet that are present in every cell. The traditions intuited an ancient inheritance within. The science found it, written in the code of life. The idea that learning is remembering goes back to one of the founding thinkers of Western philosophy, who told a story of a soul that had seen the truth before birth and spent its earthly life recollecting what it once knew. In one famous scene, a teacher draws geometric truths out of an untutored boy merely by asking the right questions, as though the knowledge were already inside the boy, waiting to be remembered rather than taught. Whatever one thinks of the metaphysics, the image is haunting, and it rhymes strangely with what biology has found. That a vast store of information really is already within us at birth, inherited, not learned, present in every cell before we ever encounter the world. The traditions of the East spoke of impressions carried across lifetimes, of a subtle record of all that has shaped a soul, of inheritances deeper than memory carried in the very seed of life. Many cultures honored their ancestors as living presences within the descendant, taught that the dead are not gone but continue in those who come after, that you carry your forebears in you. None of these were biology, and they meant many different things. But the recurring shape of the intuition, that we contain within us, an inheritance from the deep past, a record we did not consciously acquire, a memory older than our own lives, has turned out to match, with eerie closeness, the literal facts of our DNA. We do carry the past within us. We carry it in our genes, in our cells, in the inherited machinery of life, a memory billions of years deep, present in us from before our first breath. There is something almost dizzying in where this leads. The universe began without memory, a churning of matter and energy that carried its substance forward, but held no record, no information about itself, nothing that could be read. For billions of years, the cosmos forged elements and built stars and scattered their ash, all of it real, none of it remembered. And then, on at least one small planet, matter crossed a threshold and became life. And life did something the universe had never done before. It began to keep records. The genetic code is information, preserved, copied, handed down, a memory in a cosmos that had never had one. With life, the universe began to remember itself, to carry forward not just its substance but a record, written in the code of living things, of the long road of life. And in you, in the human being, that remembering has gone further still, for you can not only carry the genetic record, but become aware of it, read it, understand where you came from. You are the universe not just remembering but knowing that it remembers. Matter that has become able to look back across billions of years and recognize its own history. That is a strange and wonderful thing for a cosmos to produce, and it is what you are. So this is the third chapter of what your body remembers, and it is the deepest kind of memory yet, because it is information, not just substance, an actual record carried across nearly 4 billion years. The unbroken chain of living cells, the universal code shared by all life, the ancient machinery still running in your cells, the swallowed bacteria powering you from within, the echoes of fish and furred ancestors in your developing body, the viral fossils in your genome, all of it is memory, the long record of life written into the living substance of you, carried unbroken from the first cells to the body reading these words. You are not only made of the universe's matter and the stars' elements, you are made as well of life's memory, the accumulated record of nearly 4 billion years of living things, inherited in an unbroken line and alive in you now. And this at last brings us to the deepest question of all, the one the traditions spent thousands of years exploring, the question of what it means that we carry the universe and its history within us, that we are made of star stuff and ancient memory, that the cosmos has somehow produced, in us, a part of itself that can look back and remember where it came from. That is where we turn now, from the science of what we carry to the long human attempt to understand what it means. Once a year, in churches across the world, people come forward one by one, and a priest presses a small smudge of ash onto each forehead and says the same quiet words, "Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return." It is a strange thing to say to someone, and a stranger thing to line up to hear. In a world that spends most of its effort helping us forget death, forget our smallness, forget that we are made of perishable matter, here is a ritual built entirely around remembering it. Remember you are dust. Not a curse, not an insult, but something closer to a teaching, repeated for centuries, that a person ought to remember, at least once a year, what they are made of and where they will return. And it turns out the instruction is more literally true than the people who first gave it could possibly have known. You are dust, in the most exact sense. You are made of the dust of stars, the dust of the early earth, the dust of countless ancestors, gathered for a while into a living body that will, in time, return its borrowed matter to the world. The ritual was right. You are dust, and you would do well to remember it. Why would so many traditions want us to remember this? Across the world, in cultures that never met, the same instruction surfaces again and again. Remember where you came from. Remember what you are made of. Remember that you are not separate from the earth, the cosmos, the source of all things, but formed from it and bound to return to it. One tradition shapes the first human from clay and breathes life into it. Another teaches that the entire universe was made from the body of a primordial cosmic being, so that everything, including you, is a piece of that original body. Another holds that the human being is a small model of the whole cosmos, containing within itself everything the universe contains. Another teaches that the soul has forgotten its true origin and must remember it to find its way home. Over and over, the same themes, that we come from something vast, that we are made of the same stuff as everything else, that we have forgotten this and need to remember it. The traditions were not doing science. They had no way to trace an atom to a star or read the history of life in a strand of DNA, but they kept arriving at the same conviction and building rituals and teachings to preserve it. And there is something telling in the fact that these were instructions to remember, not simply statements of fact. The traditions did not just say, once, that we are made of the cosmos and leave it there. They built the reminder into ritual, into scripture, into practices repeated year after year, generation after generation, as though they understood that this truth is easily lost and must be actively kept alive. Remember, you are dust. Remember your origin. Remember that you are not separate. The repetition itself is a clue. You do not need to keep reminding people of things they cannot forget. The traditions kept reminding us of our cosmic kinship precisely because it is so easy to lose sight of, because the daily experience of being a separate self in a hard-edged body works constantly against it, because forgetting our connection to the whole seems to be the natural drift of the human mind. So they built rituals to fight the forgetting, to press the truth back into awareness, to make us remember, again and again, what we are and where we came from. They were not only teaching a fact, they were waging a long campaign against forgetting, and the fact they fought to preserve was the one the science has now confirmed, that the human being is woven from the cosmos, made of its substance, kin to all things, and that to live well, a person must remember this rather than forget it. And this is where the science we have followed and the wisdom of the traditions meet, in the single word, remember. We have spent 3 chapters learning what the body remembers, in the most literal sense, the ancient hydrogen of the universe's birth, the heavier elements forged in stars, the 4 billion year record of life written in DNA. The body carries all of this, a memory of the cosmos and its history held in matter and in code. And the traditions, long before any of this could be measured, kept telling us to remember something very close to it, that we are dust, that we come from the source, that we are a small cosmos, that we have forgotten our origin and must recall it. Two kinds of remembering: the literal memory the body carries in its atoms and genes, and the spiritual remembering the traditions asked of us meet over the same truth, that we are made of the universe and must not forget it. There is something worth noticing about the kind of agreement this is before we listen to the details. The traditions did not predict the chemistry of the body or the structure of DNA. They had no way to. What they had was a different kind of knowing, turned inward and outward at once, onto the felt experience of being a human being in a vast world. And from that knowing they drew conclusions about what we are and where we came from. The science, working the other way, through measurement and analysis, drew conclusions about the same questions, and the two keep landing in the same place. The traditions said we are made of the earth and the cosmos. The science traced the atoms and found it so. The traditions said we are a small universe. The science found the same elements and laws in the body and the heavens. The traditions said we carry an ancient inheritance within. The science found it written in our genes. Two ways of knowing, ancient and modern, inward and outward, arriving at one conclusion. So let us listen now to what the traditions actually said about our cosmic origin, and see how closely their ancient remembering matches what the science has found. Begin with dust, because it is the oldest and most widespread image of all. In the Hebrew account of creation, the first human is formed from the dust of the ground, shaped from ordinary earth, and then given life by the breath of the divine breathed into it. The detail is precise and deliberate. The human being is earth that has been given breath, matter that has been quickened into life. And the very name of the first human is bound up with the word for ground, for earth, so that the human being is, in the language itself, the earthling, the earth creature, the one made of soil. The same scripture tells the human being, after the fall, that dust he is, and to dust he shall return, a recognition that the body is borrowed earth, lent for a lifetime, and given back at death. This is not a grim teaching, though it can sound like one. It is a true one. The body is made of the earth's matter, and it returns to it. We are, quite literally, the ground that has stood up and begun to breathe, and when the breath departs, the matter returns to the ground from which it came. The ritual of the ashes, repeated for centuries, simply makes this truth visible once a year. And the image of the human being shaped from earth is not unique to one people. It appears across the world, in cultures with no connection to each other. Many traditions tell of the first humans being moulded from clay or earth by divine hands, kneaded out of the ground like a potter shaping a vessel, and then given life. Peoples of every continent told versions of this story. The human being formed from soil, from mud, from the dust of the earth, and quickened into life by a divine breath or word. It is one of the most widespread stories the human race has ever told about its own origin, and it says something consistent, that we are made of the earth, that our substance is the ordinary matter of the ground, that we are not foreign to the world, but formed from it. Different peoples, separated by oceans and ages, kept telling the same story, that we are earth-given life. They could not have known how literally true it was, that the matter of the body really is the matter of the earth, drawn from it and returning to it. But they felt it, and they preserved it in their oldest stories, the recognition that we are the ground that learned to walk. And the science we have followed says exactly this, in its own language. Your body is made of the matter of the earth, taken up from the food you eat and the water you drink and the air you breathe, all of it drawn from the planet's store of matter, all of it returning to that store when you die, and your body's atoms disperse back into the world. And the earth's matter is itself made of the dust of stars, the elements forged in stellar cores and scattered in stellar deaths, gathered into the planet. So you are dust twice over, the dust of the earth, and beneath that, the dust of stars. The ancient teaching that we are formed from dust and return to dust is not a poetic softening of the truth. It is the truth, traced now all the way down to the stellar furnaces that made the dust in the first place. Remember, you are dust. The science only adds, and the dust is made of stars. The priest presses the ash onto the forehead and speaks a truth older than he knows, older than his tradition, as old as the stars whose dust he is marking onto the skin. Alongside the image of dust runs another ancient idea, just as widespread, that the human being is a microcosm, a little cosmos, a small whole that mirrors the great whole. Thinkers across many traditions held that the same elements which make up the wider universe make up the human body, that the same forces which govern the heavens govern the person, that to understand a human being is to see the entire cosmos reflected in miniature. The human being was seen as a bridge between the great world and the small, containing within itself, in concentrated form, everything that the universe contains spread out across its vastness. This was not a vague poetic flourish. It was a serious claim about the structure of reality, that the part contains the pattern of the whole, that the human being is the universe written small. And it appears independently in tradition after tradition, in the philosophy of the classical world, in the mystical strands of more than one religion, in the medical and alchemical thought of both East and West. So many separate cultures arriving at the same idea suggests they were responding to something real, some genuine correspondence between the human being and the cosmos that careful attention kept revealing. And the science has now shown what that correspondence is. The human body really is made of the same elements as the stars. The same physical laws really do govern the body and the heavens. The microcosm really does contain, in its substance, the materials and the patterns of the macrocosm. The ancient intuition was correct. You are a small cosmos. The thinkers who held this idea loved to draw out the correspondences in detail. They saw the warmth of the body as a small echo of the fire of the sun, the fluids of the body as a small echo of the seas and rivers, the breath as a small echo of the winds, the framework of the bones as a small echo of the earth and stone. Some compared the circulation of blood through the body to the circulation of waters through the world, the branching of the blood vessels to the branching of rivers. The phrase that came to capture this whole way of seeing was that what is above is like what is below, that the great world and the small world reflect each other, that the pattern of the cosmos is repeated in the pattern of the human being. Much of this was loose analogy, and not all of it holds up. The ancients pressed the correspondences further than the facts allow, finding mirror matches that were more poetry than truth. But the core intuition, that the human being is made of the same elements and follows the same laws as the cosmos, that the small reflects the large because both are made of one reality, was exactly right. You really are a small cosmos, made of the same stuff and shaped by the same laws as the Great One. The details the ancients got wrong. The heart of it they got right, long before anyone could prove it. Nowhere is the kinship of the human being and the cosmos drawn more boldly than in the Hindu tradition. One of the oldest hymns of the Indian scriptures tells of a primordial cosmic being, a vast original person, from whose body the entire universe was made. The sky from the head, the earth from the feet, the sun from the eye, the directions of space from the ears, all of creation formed from the body of this cosmic being. The image is staggering. It means that everything in the universe is a part of one original body, that the cosmos and the human form share a common pattern, that to look at the world is to look at the limbs of a vast being of which we are small reflections, and the tradition went further. It taught that the human body is made of the same fundamental elements as the entire cosmos: earth, water, fire, air, and the subtle element of space, the same 5 elements composing both the body and the world, so that the human being is woven from precisely the materials that make up everything else. To know the elements of the body is to know the elements of the cosmos, because they are the same elements. The tradition held that the innermost self of the human being is identical with the ultimate ground of all reality, expressed in the famous teaching that you are that the deepest essence of you is not separate from the deepest essence of the universe but one with it. Here the kinship of the human and the cosmic reaches its furthest point, not merely that we are made of the same stuff, but that at the deepest level we are the same reality. The teaching about the 5 elements carried a practical wisdom too. Since the body was understood to be composed of the same elements as the cosmos, earth in its solid parts, water in its fluids, fire in its warmth and digestion, air in its breath, and space in its hollows and openings, the human being was seen as quite literally a portion of the cosmos temporarily organized into a person. And at death, the tradition taught, these elements return to their cosmic sources, the earth of the body to the earth, the water to the waters, the warmth to the cosmic fire, the breath to the air, the space within to the space without. Death, in this view, is not annihilation, but dispersal, the borrowed elements going back to the great reservoirs they came from, to be gathered again into other forms. This is a vision of profound continuity between the body and the cosmos, the person as a temporary eddy in the flow of the universal elements, formed from them and returning to them. And it matches, with surprising precision, what the science describes, a body assembled from the matter of the world, holding its form for a while and dispersing back into the world at death. Its atoms taken up again into other things. The tradition reached this through contemplation of the elements. The science reached it by tracing the atoms. The conclusion is the same. The Chinese traditions reached a similar vision by their own path. In the Taoist understanding, the human body was seen as a small universe, mirroring the structure of the Great One, with the same forces flowing through it that flow through the cosmos. The vital energy that animates the body was understood to be the same energy that moves through all of nature, so that the human being is not separate from the world, but a particular concentration of the same forces that drive the seasons, the weather, the growth of plants, the movement of the stars. The body and the cosmos were mapped onto each other in detail, the organs corresponding to elements and seasons and directions, the human being standing as a meeting point between heaven above and earth below, partaking of both. The Taoist inner alchemists treated the body as a miniature cosmos to be cultivated and refined, believing that by working with the energies within the body, one was working with the very forces of the universe in concentrated form. Here too, in a tradition utterly separate from those of India and the Mediterranean, the same conviction surfaces, that the human being is a small cosmos, woven from the same forces and following the same patterns as the Great One, not separate from nature but a particular expression of it. The science of star-forged elements and shared physical law would have astonished these thinkers in its details but not in its conclusion. They already knew in their way that we are made of the same stuff as the world, that we are a small cosmos within the Great One. And then there is the deepest form of the instruction to remember, the philosophical idea that learning itself is a kind of recollection, that the soul already knows the deepest truths and must remember rather than acquire them. One of the founding thinkers of Western philosophy taught that the soul, before birth, had beheld the eternal truths, and that earthly learning is really the recovery of this forgotten knowledge, a remembering of what the soul once knew and lost. To learn, on this view, is to remember. The truth is already within, waiting to be recalled. Later thinkers in the same tradition developed the idea that the soul has descended from a higher source and forgotten its origin, and that the spiritual task of a life is to remember where one came from and to find the way back, to recollect the source from which the soul fell and return to it. This theme, the soul's forgetting of its divine origin and its task of remembering, runs through the mystical traditions of more than one religion. The sense that we have come from somewhere vast and high, that we have forgotten it in the business of earthly life, and that wisdom consists in remembering our true origin and orienting ourselves back toward it. These were spiritual and philosophical claims about the soul and its origin, not about atoms and genes. There is a particular image that several of these traditions share of a being who has fallen asleep or grown drunk or become lost and forgotten who they truly are and where they came from, and whose whole task is to wake, to remember, to recall their true origin. In one ancient story, a royal child is sent on a journey, forgets their royal home and their mission, falls into a kind of sleep in a foreign land, and must be reminded by a message from home of who they really are, so that they can wake and remember and return. The story is meant as an image of the soul, that we have come from somewhere high and have forgotten it, that we wander in forgetfulness, and that the work of a life is to remember our true origin and find our way home. It is a haunting picture, and it carries a strange resonance with the literal facts, for we have, in a sense, forgotten where we came from. We walk around treating ourselves as separate beings, made of ordinary stuff, native to nothing but our own small lives, having forgotten that we are made of stars, woven from the cosmos, carrying its history in every cell. The traditions told us to remember our cosmic origin, and most of the time, caught up in the business of living, we do forget it. The instruction to remember is needed precisely because forgetting is so easy. But the shape of the teaching is the same one this whole story keeps returning to. Remember where you came from. You have forgotten your origin. Recall it, and you will understand what you are. The Buddhist tradition approached the same kinship from a different angle, through the teaching that there is no separate, independent self at all, that what we call a person is a temporary gathering of elements and processes, held together for a while and then dispersed. The body, in this understanding, is a coming together of the basic elements, earth and water and fire and air, borrowed from the world and assembled into a living form, and at death these elements simply return to the world from which they came, the solid matter to the earth, the fluids to the waters, the warmth to the fire, the breath to the air. There is no separate substance that is uniquely you. There is only the borrowed matter of the cosmos, gathered briefly into a pattern and then released. This sounds, at first, like a hard teaching, a denial of the self. But it is also a teaching of profound connection. If you are not a separate thing but a temporary gathering of the world's elements, then you are not separate from the world at all. You are the world, briefly taking the form of a person, before flowing back into the larger whole. The boundary between you and the cosmos is not as solid as it seems. You are made of the cosmos, borrowed from it, and you will return to it. And this, once again, is exactly what the science has found. You are a temporary gathering of the universe's matter, assembled for a while into a living pattern, destined to disperse back into the world. The Buddhists saw it through contemplation. The science traced it through the atoms. Both arrived at the same truth, that there is no hard wall between you and the cosmos, that you are the universe's borrowed matter, gathered for a time. The theme of coming from a source and returning to it runs through still other traditions. One holds that we come from the divine and to the divine we return, a brief journey out from the source and back to it, the human life, a short arc that begins and ends in the same origin. Another speaks of the human being as formed from clay and destined to return to the earth, only to be raised again. Across these traditions, despite their deep differences, the same arc appears. We come from somewhere, we are here briefly, we return to where we came from, and the matter of the body traces exactly this arc. Your atoms came from the cosmos, were gathered into you for the span of a life, and will return to the cosmos when you die, taken up again into the earth, the air, the waters, and eventually, on a long enough time scale, back into the great cycles of the stars. The journey out and back, from source to source, that the traditions describe for the soul, is the literal journey of the matter of the body. We come from the cosmos, are gathered into a life, and return to the cosmos. The traditions told the story of the soul's journey. The atoms make the same journey, and we can trace it. Why would so many separate traditions, with no contact between them, arrive at the same conviction that the human being is made of the cosmos, kin to all things, a small model of the great whole, formed from dust or from a cosmic body or from the elements of the world, and called to remember this origin? The simplest answer is the one this whole story has kept finding: that they were all looking closely at the same reality, the human being and its place in the world, and the thing they were looking at really does have the properties they kept finding in it. We really are made of the same elements as the cosmos. We really are a small gathering of the universe's matter. We really do come from the stars and the earth and return to them. The traditions converged on the cosmic origin of the human being, for the same reason different explorers converge on the location of a continent. It was actually there. This should not be flattened into a false agreement, and honesty requires admitting that the traditions differ deeply in what they made of our cosmic origin. Some saw the body as sacred, a temple. Others saw it as a prison the soul must escape. Some longed to return to the source and leave the body behind. Others embraced the body and the earth as good. Some understood the cosmic kinship in terms of a personal creator, others in terms of an impersonal ground, others in terms of a web of interdependence with no ground at all. These are real differences, and they matter, and to pretend the traditions all said the same thing would be to force a false unity onto a rich and contested history. But beneath the differences lies a shared recognition, and it is the recognition that concerns us, that the human being is not separate from the cosmos, but woven from it, made of its substance, kin to all things, and called to remember this. On that, despite everything they disagreed about, the traditions quietly agree, and it is the thing the science has confirmed. They could not measure it, could not trace the atoms or read the genes, but through long attention to the human being and its place in the world, they sensed the truth that the science would later confirm in detail. We are woven from the cosmos. We carry it within us. And to live well, the traditions insisted with one voice. We must remember this rather than forget it, must hold on to our kinship with all things, rather than imagining ourselves separate, must recall, as the ashes on the forehead recall, that we are dust, and that the dust is the dust of stars. So the traditions and the science, approaching from opposite ends of human knowing, meet over the same truth and the same word. The traditions spent thousands of years teaching people to remember their cosmic origin, building it into rituals and scriptures and philosophies, pressing the ashes onto the forehead, telling the story of the dust and the breath, the cosmic body, the small universe within, the soul's forgotten home. And the science, tracing the atoms and reading the genes, found that the origin the traditions told us to remember is literally written into us, in the ancient hydrogen and the star-forged elements and the 4 billion-year record of life. Both are telling us to remember the same thing, that we are made of the universe, woven from its substance, carrying its history within us, kin to everything that is. But there remains one last question, the hardest of all, the one that decides what all of this finally means. Is the kinship real in a way that should change how we live, a true belonging that answers the old human loneliness? Or is it a beautiful set of facts that, in the end, means nothing, leaving us as alone as we ever were, merely made of more interesting material? Does it matter that you are made of stars and ancient memory, or is that just a striking fact with no weight? That is the question we have to face squarely now, with honesty and without flinching from either answer. It is the question of what it means to be the universe, remembering itself in you, and it is where we go finally now. Does it matter that you are made of stars? That is the question we have arrived at, and it cannot be waved away. We have traced, across 4 chapters, an extraordinary set of facts. The hydrogen in your body was made in the first minutes of the universe. The carbon and oxygen and iron were forged in stars and scattered in their deaths. The code in your cells is a 4 billion year record of life, inherited unbroken from the first living things. You are, in the most literal sense, made of the cosmos and its history, a gathering of ancient matter carrying an ancient memory. And the traditions, long before any of this could be measured, told us to remember exactly this, that we are dust, that we come from the source, that we are a small cosmos kin to all things. All of it is true. But here is the hard question, the one that decides everything. Does it mean anything? Is the fact that you are made of stars a reason to feel differently about your life? Or is it just a striking piece of trivia, true but weightless? Think back over the ground we have crossed, because the answer depends on holding all of it at once. We started with a breath, and the discovery that the hydrogen in it is nearly as old as time, forged in the first minutes of the universe and carried, unbroken, to you. We followed your blood and found the iron in it made in the death of a star, and your bones and found the calcium forged in stellar cores, and learned that nearly every element in your body was built in the lives and deaths of suns. We looked into your cells and found a code 4 billion years old, a record of life inherited in an unbroken chain from the first living things, the ancient machinery of life still running in you, the swallowed bacteria still powering you, the echoes of fish and furred ancestors still marking your developing body. And we listened to the traditions, who told us across thousands of years to remember exactly this, that we are dust, that we come from the cosmos, that we are a small universe kin to all things. The facts are extraordinary, and they are solid. The question is what they add up to, whether they are a reason to feel differently about your life, or just a striking piece of trivia that changes nothing. Let us take the cold answer seriously, because it deserves to be taken seriously, and because a story that only comforts you has not earned your trust. The cold answer goes like this. Yes, you are made of stars. So is everything else. The rock in your garden is made of stars. The dirt under your feet is made of stars. The garbage in the landfill is made of stars. Being made of stars is not special. It is the most ordinary thing in the universe, true of every atom of every object everywhere. To feel moved by it is to be moved by a triviality, like being moved to learn that your house is made of bricks. And yes, your body carries the history of the cosmos in its atoms and its genes. But carrying a history is not the same as it mattering. A rock carries the history of the earth in its layers, and the rock feels nothing, means nothing, is owed nothing. The universe that made you is, as far as anyone can show, utterly indifferent to you, a vast machinery of matter and energy, grinding on without purpose or care, that happened, through blind processes, to assemble some of its atoms into a creature that can feel and wonder. That you can trace your atoms to the stars is a fact about chemistry. It is not a reason to feel at home in a cosmos that would crush you without noticing and will forget you completely. The loneliness is not cured by knowing what you are made of. It is, if anything, sharpened. A thinker who held this view might press it further. The universe, they would say, is not only indifferent, but immense beyond any human meaning. Billions of years old, billions of light years across, containing more stars than there are grains of sand on all the beaches of the earth. And against that immensity, a human life is less than a flicker, gone in an instant, unremembered. To learn that you are made of this vast machinery is not consoling, they would say. It is humbling to the point of annihilation, a reminder of how small and brief and accidental you are, a speck of star stuff that will return to dust and be forgotten by a cosmos that never knew it was there. The grandeur of the cosmic story, on this view, only makes the human being smaller by comparison, a momentary arrangement of borrowed atoms in a universe that dwarfs it beyond comprehension. This is a real and serious response, felt by many thoughtful people who have looked honestly at the vastness, and it would be cheap to wave it away. The cosmic perspective can crush as easily as it can console. We have to reckon with that honestly before we say anything else. This is a serious answer, and it cannot be dismissed, and we will not pretend it can. Everything it says about the facts is correct. Being made of stars really is universal, not unique to you. The universe really does appear indifferent, with no sign that it knows or cares that you exist. Carrying a history really is not the same as that history having meaning. If you are looking for proof, written in the physics, that the universe loves you, or made you on purpose, or will remember you, the science does not provide it, and anyone who claims it does is overreaching. The facts of your cosmic origin do not come with a guarantee of meaning attached. They are just facts, and facts, by themselves, are silent about what they mean. So if the cold answer is right that the facts mean nothing, then this whole story has been a beautiful description of an indifferent truth, and the loneliness stands. Everything now turns on a single question. Is meaninglessness really the default, the thing we should believe unless meaning can be proved, or is that itself just an assumption we have absorbed? A great deal of modern thought takes it for granted that the universe is meaningless until proven otherwise, that the burden of proof lies entirely on anyone who would find meaning in it, that the hard-headed and honest position is to assume the void and grant nothing more. But this is worth questioning. The assumption that meaninglessness is the safe default is not itself a finding of science. It is a mood, a stance, a way of reading the silence of the facts. And the facts are genuinely silent. They do not announce that they are meaningless any more than they announce that they are meaningful. The silence is real, and it goes both ways. So the question is not whether you can prove meaning against a proven backdrop of meaninglessness. The question is how to respond to a set of facts that are, in themselves, silent, and that you must interpret one way or another simply by how you choose to live. Neither answer is forced, both are chosen. And once you see that, the cold answer loses its air of being the obvious, default, grown-up truth, and becomes what it always was, one interpretation among others, no more proven than the rest. But notice, again, what the cold answer actually proves, and what it only assumes. It proves that the facts do not force a meaning on you. It does not prove that they have none. The cold answer treats meaninglessness as the default, the obvious truth that needs no defense, and treats any sense of meaning as a sentimental addition that must be justified. But that is a choice, not a discovery. The universe does not come labeled meaningful or meaningless. The facts are silent, and the silence can be read either way. The person who looks at their star-forged body and feels nothing has not discovered that it means nothing. They have chosen to grant it no weight. The person who looks at the same body and feels wonder, kinship, a sense of belonging to something vast, has not made an error. They have chosen to let the fact land. Both are responses to the same silent facts, and the facts do not decide between them. What the science establishes is real and astonishing, that you are made of the universe and carry its history within you. What that means is not written in the science, it is yours to read. And the cold answer has no more authority than the warm one, because both are interpretations laid over facts that, by themselves, say nothing about meaning at all. There is even a reply to the worry that the vastness crushes us, that the size of the cosmos makes a human life meaningless by comparison. The reply is that size is not the measure of meaning. A thing is not important in proportion to how big it is, or unimportant in proportion to how small. A single human face, a single act of love, a single moment of understanding, is not made meaningless by the fact that the universe is large. We do not measure the worth of a poem by its length, or the worth of a person by their height. The vastness of the cosmos is real, but it is not an argument against the meaning of a human life, any more than the vastness of the ocean is an argument against the meaning of a single wave. And there is something the smallness misses entirely. You are small, yes, against the scale of the cosmos, but you are also the place where that whole vast cosmos has become able to know itself. The immensity that seems to dwarf you is, in you, looking at itself and understanding. The smallness and the awareness are both true at once, and the awareness is not made less by the smallness. A speck of star stuff that can comprehend the universe that made it is not diminished by being small. It is, if anything, made more astonishing by it. And there is a reply to the charge of triviality, the claim that being made of stars is nothing special because everything is. It is true that the rock and the dirt are also made of stars, but the rock does not know it. The dirt cannot trace its atoms to the stellar furnaces that made them, cannot feel wonder at its own origin, cannot look up at the night sky and recognize its kin. You can. Of all the star stuff in the universe, you are a piece that has become able to know that it is star stuff, to trace its own cosmic history, to feel something about it. That is not trivial. That is one of the rarest and strangest things the universe has produced. Matter that has become aware of where it came from. The comparison to the rock and the dirt, which was meant to make you feel ordinary, actually points to what makes you extraordinary. Yes, the rock is made of stars, but the rock will never know it. The rock cannot trace its atoms, cannot feel wonder, cannot be moved by its origin, cannot look up at the night sky at all. It is star stuff that has stayed asleep. You are star stuff that has woken up. The difference between you and the rock is not in what you are made of, which is the same, but in what that material has become able to do. In you, the star stuff has organized itself into something that can think, feel, remember, and understand. Something that can hold the whole vast story of the cosmos in its mind and be moved by it. That is not nothing. That is the difference between matter that merely exists and matter that knows it exists, and it is one of the strangest and rarest things the universe has produced. So when someone tells you that being made of stars is trivial because everything is, you can answer, not everything made of stars can know it. I can. And that changes everything. The cold answer is right, that being made of stars is universal. But being made of stars and knowing it, being a piece of the cosmos that has woken up enough to recognize itself, is not universal at all. It may be among the rarest things there is, and you are one of them. The universe is mostly unconscious of itself, vast stretches of matter that forge and scatter and gather without any awareness. And here, in you, a small piece of it has become aware, has learned its own story. Consider how strange this is when you really look at it. For most of the universe's history, there was no one to know it existed. The Big Bang happened, with no one to see it. Stars lived and died, forging the elements, with no one to know. For billions of years, the cosmos forged and scattered and gathered its matter in complete darkness, in the sense that mattered most. There was no awareness of it anywhere, no mind to register that any of it was happening. And then, on at least one small planet, matter crossed a threshold and became life, and life grew more complex, and eventually it produced creatures that could look up and wonder and ask where they came from, and trace the answer back through the stars to the beginning of time. In us, the universe opened its eyes. After billions of years of unconscious forging, a part of the cosmos became able to look back at the whole and understand it, to reconstruct its own history, to know that it is made of stars. You are part of that awakening. When you understand that the iron in your blood was made in a supernova, the universe is, through you, coming to know itself. That is not a small thing. It may be the thing the whole long process was building toward, whether by design or by accident. matter that can finally understand what it is. And you are a piece of that understanding, one of the places where the cosmos has woken up. That is not a triviality. That is, perhaps, the most remarkable thing about you. This is the same place every one of these journeys has led, the border between what the facts establish and what only you can decide. When we followed the salt of tears to the stars, we found the same thing, a real kinship between the human and the cosmic, and the same question of whether it means anything or merely is. When we traced grief and found a real structure beneath the pain, when we followed the rhythms of the heart, when we asked what consciousness is and whether the brain makes it or receives it, when we followed the flow of energy that builds a star and learned the same flow builds you, when we asked whether the patterns running through everything are a kind of music the universe plays, each time the facts piled up, astonishing and solid, and then fell silent about their meaning, leaving the last step to us. The universe, it turns out, is generous with facts and silent about what they mean. It shows us, again and again, that we are woven into it, made of it, kin to it, shaped by the same laws and built from the same matter as everything else. And then it leaves us to decide what that is worth. There is a thread running through all of it, and it is the thread that runs through your own body. Again and again we have found that the line between you and the universe is far thinner than it feels, that you are not a separate thing dropped into an alien cosmos, but a piece of that cosmos, made of its matter, shaped by its laws, carrying its history. The body that remembers the universe is just the most intimate proof of this, because it is so undeniably yours, and yet so undeniably made of everything else. Your own flesh is the meeting place of the personal and the cosmic, the small and the vast, the self and the universe. And what to make of that meeting, whether to feel it as a cold accident or a profound belonging, has always been the choice these stories leave you with. It is the choice your own body puts before you, every moment, made as it is of stars and ancient memory. So let the question come home, to the only place it can finally be answered, which is your own life, your own body, your own sense of where you stand in the world. Here is what is true, what no objection can take from you. You are not a stranger in the universe. You did not arrive here from outside it, a separate soul dropped into alien matter. You grew out of it. You are made of its oldest substance and its star-forged elements, assembled by its own processes, carrying its history in your atoms and your genes. The universe is not a vast, cold place that you happen to find yourself in. It is the place you are made of, the source of your every atom, the furnace that forged your elements, the long process of life that wrote your code. You belong here the way a wave belongs to the sea, not as a thing placed in it, but as a thing made of it, an expression of it, inseparable from it. The old loneliness, the sense of being a small, separate creature in an indifferent cosmos, rests on a kind of forgetting. What changes when you remember? Not the facts of your life. The bills still come, the grief still wound, the body still ages and will die. Remembering that you are made of stars does not exempt you from any of that, but it changes the frame around it, the background against which your life is lived. It is one thing to suffer as a meaningless accident in a void. It is another to suffer as a piece of the cosmos that has woken into awareness for a little while, made of the same stuff as the stars, carrying a history 4 billion years deep, kin to everything that is. The pain is the same, the frame is different, and the frame matters because we do not live in raw facts but in the meanings we wrap around them. To remember your cosmic origin is to live the same life against a vaster and stranger and more wondrous background. To know that the ordinary body going through an ordinary day is made of the rarest material in existence, forged in cosmic fire, carrying the memory of the universe. It does not solve the problems of a life, but it changes what it feels like to be the one living it. And that, the traditions understood, is worth the effort of remembering. You are not separate. You never were. The proof is in your bones, your blood, your breath, your cells. There is a particular comfort in this that does not depend on believing anything the science cannot support. You do not have to believe in a God who watches you, or a purpose written into the stars, to feel the force of it. You only have to take seriously what is simply true, that you are not an alien presence in the universe, not a soul exiled into hostile matter, not a stranger looking out at a world that has nothing to do with you. You are a child of the cosmos in the most literal sense, formed from its substance, born of its processes, carrying its history in every cell. When you feel cut off, isolated, alone, that feeling is real as an experience but false as a fact about your place in things. You are not cut off. You could not be cut off. Every breath ties you to the air of the whole planet, every meal to the life of the earth, every atom to the stars that forged it and the cosmos that made them. The connection is not something you have to achieve or earn or believe into being. It is already there, woven into your physical substance, the most basic fact about what you are. The loneliness is the forgetting. The truth is the belonging. And the belonging was never in doubt, because it is written in the very matter of your body. This does not require you to believe anything false. You do not have to believe the universe loves you, or made you on purpose, or will remember your name. The science does not show those things, and we will not pretend it does. But you also do not have to believe the opposite, that you are a meaningless accident in a void that has nothing to do with you. That is not shown either. What is shown, what is simply true, is that you are made of the cosmos and carry its history, that you are a piece of the universe that has become able to know itself, that the line between you and everything else is far thinner than it feels. What you make of that is yours to decide, but you are allowed to let it move you. You are allowed to feel, when you look at the night sky, that you are looking at your origin and your kin. You are allowed to feel, when you touch your own pulse, that you are touching star-forged iron moving through a body 4 billion years in the making. You are allowed to feel at home in the universe, because you are made of it, and that feeling is not a sentimental error but a response to something real. The facts do not force it on you, but they permit it, fully, and the permission is itself a kind of gift. And there is a way of living that follows from taking this seriously, not as a doctrine but as a practice, the same practice the traditions were pointing at when they told us to remember. It is simply this, to let the knowledge of what you are change how you move through an ordinary day. To remember, when you drink a glass of water, that the hydrogen in it watched the universe begin. To remember, when you feel your own heartbeat, that it moves the iron of dead stars. To remember, when you look at another person, that they too are made of stars and ancient memory, that the same unbroken thread runs through them, that you are kin not only to the cosmos, but to every other person and creature made of the same borrowed matter. This kind of remembering does not require any belief the science cannot support. It asks only that you not forget what is true, that you let the astonishing facts of your origin inform the way you live, rather than slipping away unnoticed. The traditions understood that this remembering has to be practiced, returned to, renewed, because the forgetting is so constant. They built it into ritual for exactly that reason. You can build it into your own life in your own way, a habit of remembering, now and then, what you are made of, and letting it lend a little wonder and a little kinship to an ordinary day. Return, one last time, to the ash on the forehead, and the old words, "Remember that you are dust." We can hear them now for what they are. Not a grim reminder of death, though they are partly that, but a teaching about what you are made of and where you came from. You are dust. The dust of the early earth, gathered into a body. And beneath that, the dust of stars, forged in cosmic furnaces and scattered across billions of years to become, at last, you. remember it. Remember the ancient hydrogen in the water of your cells, as old as the universe. Remember the iron in your blood, made in a dying star. Remember the code in your cells, a record of life 4 billion years deep. Remember that you are made of the cosmos, that you carry its whole history within you, that you are a piece of the universe that has woken up enough to know its own story. The traditions told you to remember this, built rituals to keep you from forgetting it, pressed the ashes onto the skin year after year so the truth would not be lost. And the science has now shown that the truth is real, written into you, traceable atom by atom and gene by gene, all the way back to the birth of time. This is a strange and beautiful thing to be able to say. Most of what the old traditions taught about our origins was a matter of faith, taken on trust, beyond any proof. But this one teaching, that we are made of the cosmos and carry its history within us, has been confirmed, traced in detail, established beyond serious doubt. You really are made of stars. We can name the kinds of stars and the kinds of explosions that made each element in you. You really do carry a 4 billion year record of life. We can read it in your genes. The ancient intuition turned out to be, of all things, literally true. One of the rare cases where the deepest poetry and the hardest science say the same thing. You do not have to choose, here, between the wonder and the facts. The wonder is the facts. The most astonishing thing the traditions ever said about you is also among the best established findings of modern science. That alignment is itself remarkable and worth holding on to. That when you feel awe at being made of stars, you are not indulging a fantasy but responding to a confirmed truth about what you are. You will forget, of course. The business of living pulls the attention back to small and urgent things, and the vast truth of your cosmic origin slips away, as it always does, and you become again, in your own mind, just a person, separate and small and alone. That is why the traditions made it a practice, a thing to return to, a remembering to be renewed, so renew it. The next time you feel small, or separate, or lost in a universe that seems to have nothing to do with you, remember what you are. Feel your own pulse, and know that it moves the iron of dead stars through your veins. Take a breath, and know that the hydrogen in it is as old as the cosmos. Look up at the night sky, and know that you are not looking at something foreign, but at the furnaces where your atoms were forged, the kind of place you came from, the family of stars to which your own body belongs. You are not a stranger here. You are the universe, remembering itself in the form of a person for a little while. You are made of stars and ancient memory, not as a figure of speech, but as the plainest fact about your body. And every cell of you, whether you remember it or not, holds the unbroken thread that runs from the birth of everything to the body reading these words. Remember that you are dust, and remember that the dust is made of stars,